Today I have a cricketing legend turned Bitcoiner, Tim Bresnan. He's played 23 tests for England. I'm going to show my lack of cricketing knowledge here, but Wikipedia's helped me out. Ashes winner 2010-11.
Wikipedia is not the place.
Oh, okay. I'll tell you what we'll do, Tim. How about how about you just give us a minute on what a legendary cricketer you are, rather than me trying to embarrass myself.
No, I think you should go.
I'll keep going then. So
Yeah, okay.
you won the Ashes in 2010-11. You won the Ashes in 2013. The World 2020 in 2010, and 23 Tests for England. And probably most famous as a Yorkshireman, right? A Yorkshireman cricketer.
Probably.
Yeah.
If you
So
say so.
well, I don't. Yeah, I that's pretty much the extent of my cricketing expertise. But
Yeah.
I've got some friends and colleagues who are big cricket fans, and when I said, "Do you know what? Tim's going to come on my podcast," they're like, "What? Tim Bresnan? Wow, legend!" As I said to you just before we started recording, you've spoken about cricket so many times, so I'm more interested in finding out a bit more about you as a person and how you came across Bitcoin, and even for elite athletes, how important money and wealth preservation is, and maybe how you feel about that, and how Bitcoin might be helping future generations of sports people more than it did previous ones.
Yeah. Well, I just it's great to be on the show. Thank you very much. To be asked is just, very kind of you because I've seen some of the guests that you've had on before and I'm like, yeah, some big guns there.
Yeah, so the first question I ask all my guests, Tim, is their earliest memories of money. So as a child, what were your first memories of money growing up?
I guess probably dinner money or little tuck shop money. So back in the days in the early 90s where you were allowed to walk yourself back and to and from school, my mum or dad used to give me a couple of quid, to stop at the shop, or not even that. I think it was like 50 pence or something. And that'd last a couple of days, and you just get a Freddo or a Taz or something on the way back from school and you get it for like 10p. Now I think they're like £1.50 or maybe even a couple of quid for a Taz.
Crazy.
It is crazy. And it just, that sort of gives you an appreciation about how much inflation affects us, really. But yeah, that would be my earliest memory of money. Growing up, we weren't affluent, didn't really have a lot from a sort of a ex-mining community. And, when the pits closed down, everyone's struggling to find new employment and all that sort of stuff. Dad worked in a glass factory as a engineer. Mum was, my early years, she was a receptionist at the hospital where I was born. Um, and then she moved over to be secretary of a haulage company. Um, so yeah, that's pretty much my early memories. And money especially, like, you buy houses for 40 grand and, even 20 grand. And, beautiful houses that are now worth, 400, 500,000. So yeah, I mean, what we've come a long way.
Yeah, indeed. What I think will be interesting is to understand, as you move through younger years, amateur cricket into the professional game. I know, like, cricketers don't earn kind of crazy money like footballers do these days, but still, I presume you got to a point where you were earning a substantial amount of money, particularly relative maybe to the area that you grew up in, and how that maybe changed your outlook or your views on money.
I guess I started very early in my professional career. So I was 16 when I made my debut. So that's when I first started earning decent money, especially for a 16-year-old. I was still in school, just about to take my GCSEs and then playing in the Yorkshire first team, paid, £500 a game. Exactly. It doesn't seem like a lot these days, but back then to a 16-year-old, that was an astronomical figure. Playing maybe 4 or 5 times a month, plus expenses and traveling costs and all that sort of stuff. It soon builds up. So that was really my first taste of decent wealth. And
Did you stay quite grounded with that? It's hard for any 16-year-old to use the Bitcoin phrase, stay humble. If you're earning 500 quid when all your mates at school are maybe earning £2 an hour if they're working stacking shelves in a supermarket, whatever. How did that affect you and your friendships?
I guess I didn't really talk about it. I was one of those, I was almost a little bit quite, not, well, yeah, I guess embarrassed to, to be earning that kind of money. Which looking back now, I shouldn't have been. So I'd worked hard for it. Um, I've been given the opportunity and I've sort of taken it with both hands. Not too long after that, I think the club realised that I was, a player on the books that was on a scholarship that was getting these astronomical match fees. And then as soon as they realised that I was getting, big match fees, they put me on a contract, which was I think my first contract was like 12 grand for the year. So obviously that the money that I was earning went way down, and the match fees were just normal match fees, like a couple of £100 or something like that. So obviously the contract over the year would save the club money, but obviously I then got security as a kicker. So then after that, I kind of just worked my way up and worked my way through the system. Kept doing really well. Kept getting bigger size contracts and signing extensions of years and things like that. Um, to where I was just part of the team um, and just earning the similar sort of cash as what everyone else in the team and county cricket was earning at that time.
Yeah. And but did you still get, lifestyle creep, and like did you kind of start living up to those salaries, or at those times did you realise that a professional sport career is relatively short and you need to be putting away for the future?
Yeah, probably when I got into my early 20s, when you start buying houses and, people are giving you investment advice, and that comes literally from, I say that from your first question, which was wealth preservation. You mentioned wealth preservation. It's more so in international cricket. When you first hit international cricket, there's a lot of IFAs sort of sniffing around in the bars and restaurants and stuff and waiting for, I guess it's the same with football. I can look after your money for you and buy this investment and buy that investment, which good thing or a bad thing? I'm not too sure. I think it's a good thing if you manage to find the right one, but there are a lot of snake oil salesmen out there that pretend to be wealth managers, especially for high profile sport people, that are just selling them investments based on the kickback that they themselves can accrue,
Yeah,
which
absolutely.
is a shame. And, I came into contact with quite a few of those. But then on the flip side, there are also guys that want to help you out and, don't want to watch you, for want of a better word, spunk all your money on, flash cars and sailboats and whatever else that young blokes buy with their cash. Not that as a cricketer you can afford that anyway, but I guess that's more football orientated money. But yeah, those guys unfortunately do exist.
Do the clubs and even Cricket England, do they do much to try and educate
Yeah,
and
they do.
give advice?
So it's the PCA, so the Professional Cricketers Association. They're the sort of custodians of the professional players inside the game, and they do a really fantastic job of trying to educate. But same as anything else, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. The best thing the PCA actually did for me, looking back, as I think I was 17 or 18-year old, was sign a piece of paper that protected my pension age to 40. Yeah. So obviously when you're 17, you're just like, what's this? I've got what's a pension? But the pension was back then, looking back from now to then was fantastic. So it was 4% and then the club would pay 8%. Salary contribution, which was, unreal. I think in pension terms, I think it still would be. So yeah, that the piece of paper I signed that protected my pension age was, looking back now, an absolute mic drop from
Yeah.
PCA.
And according to Wikipedia, you turned 40 this year, right?
I did.
So you could start accessing your cricket pension. Wow. That's it. That's amazing.
Guess
I'm
where it's
I'm
gone?
well, we'll come on to that shortly, I think.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, I mean, I'm 49, 50 next year, so I'm just crossing my fingers and hoping that the rules don't change before I get to 57,
yeah.
because
Well,
that's That's the soonest I can get to
The
mine.
the rule changes, and the Rachel from accounts of the government, and then when they do start talking about changing the rules about potentially taxing unrealized gains and taxing pensions, and that you're just like, whoa, like get me out of here kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah,
I think it's fine when they change things like, I don't know, the tax rates or thresholds. That's just what governments can do. I just think pensions, because I've been paying into a pension for best part of 30 years. So they're such long-term investments. I just think it's really underhand when governments make material changes to them, because they only just changed recently that they're part of your inheritance tax calculation now, and they never used to be. Well,
exactly.
that's a huge change to
Yeah.
to a lot of people.
Yeah.
So let's get on to Bitcoin then, Tim. How did you find out about it? What were your first experiences of Bitcoin?
So I guess you could call me. I'm not sure where I am on the scale. I'm either an OG or an early adopter. So around 2016, end of 2016, I read an article. I was on. I can't remember. I was on England tour or I was playing in the Bangladesh Premier League as an overseas player. But I was in Bangladesh definitely, and there's not a lot to do because the security risk is quite high. You're basically confined to your hotel room, which once you've had a couple of hours by the pool and had 5 copies in the lobby, there's not a right lot to do. So I'd surf the internet and stuff, and I came across an article on Bitcoin, and I read quite a lot about it. I didn't do a deep dive for want of a better word, but since, obviously. Um, but yeah, I read about it, and I was like, do you know what? That sounds like the future to me because I think contactless payment had just started to come out. Um, Not with your phone, but with your actual physical card. And I could see the sort of progression of how money could be used and the technology behind what makes it work. I was just thought this thing, cryptocurrency in general, but mainly Bitcoin, could be the future of money. It's going to go digital. It's already started to go digital. We don't tend to touch much physical cash even at that point. So I could see not the writing on the wall because I don't think we're quite there yet, but I could see the future of it.
In 2016, then, was it more about the technological reality of what crypto and Bitcoin would deliver rather than what you've probably
Since
researched more
discovered.
since about, what is the real value of money? And
Yeah,
okay,
exactly.
okay.
It was more of a technology play, but it took me ages to buy some. So I'd say towards the top of the 2017 bull cycle is where I first bought for maybe like 6K or something. And I still wasn't aware that at that point that you didn't have to buy a full coin, and and then
At
instead
those
of
levels, you
buying,
could probably afford to, so it
yeah,
wasn't so
yeah,
bad.
instead of I bought a little bit of Bitcoin, and then I was like, well, wow, there's all this other stuff that's quite cool. And look, if I put $200 in there, I get a couple of million of these tokens. What happens if they go to 6,000?
Yeah.
Like the mistakes that everyone makes when they first get into it. I made all those mistakes. The only one I didn't make was, well, it wasn't a mistake, was I bought ETH. I bought Ethereum, $300, and changed that into Bitcoin as well.
Do you hold any other crypto still, or are you Bitcoin only?
I do, I do. So the more I've learnt about it, the more I've learnt that the cycles are a cycle, it's cyclical. You have a bull cycle and a bear cycle and a Bitcoin cycle and an altcoin cycle. And the only reason I buy anything other than Bitcoin is to make more Bitcoin, which a lot of Bitcoiners that are maxis will not agree with. And I've spoken to quite a few of those and just say, look, like, yeah, it's a punt. And it's a punt that I'm willing to take to make a stack more sats, basically.
Yeah, yeah. I think all these things. I think even in my experience, you have Bitcoin. You have people who say they're Bitcoin maxes, but then they're on a system using leverage to try and like long and short Bitcoin to get more Bitcoin, and or like I've got pensions and stuff that I'm putting in MicroStrategy and Smarter
Yeah,
Web Company and things, and it's very hard to, even if you're committed and convicted in Bitcoin, it's almost like that human psychology of how could I find ways to play the system to get a bit more,
yeah,
whether that's extending your mortgage on your house to buy more Bitcoin, or as you say, if you believe there'll be an altcoin rally,
yeah,
and that means you can buy something now that's going to double in price, which means you can get, but Bitcoin goes up 30, 40, 50%, well, you're
yeah,
going to end up with more sats.
yeah.
And
Correct.
only time will prove whether, you
That
know,
is correct.
whether that's successful or not. But
The key metric is that when you buy it, as long as it goes up against Bitcoin,
yes,
because the fiat sort of monetary value of said asset doesn't matter at all. It's the asset versus the sats on the chart. That is
yeah.
that is the interesting thing.
And the timing of it as well. I mean, to be honest, XRP is the one that always blows my mind because I had some and I got rid of it and it was falling and falling and falling. And then it went from, I don't know, in the last 6 months or so, it went from 50 odd cents up to $2.50 again. So
Correct.
as much as the Bitcoin maxes and myself, I wince at that.
Yeah.
But the reality is, if you'd allocated some at 50 odd cents, you'd have more sats now than,
Yep.
as long as you sell it.
Yeah,
I mean, that's
exactly.
the other
As long
thing,
as you
isn't it?
sell
It's
it.
the timing. As long as
As
you
long
sell
as you
it
sell it. Yeah.
and don't get greedy.
Yeah.
And I think, to be fair, for most people, probably the best, least stressful approach is buy a little bit of Bitcoin as often as you can. But of course, you can do that alongside these other things.
Exactly.
It's not a one size fits all.
That's the best approach. It's been shown over time. The DCA, no matter when you got in, you could have bought the top of the 17 bull, you could have bought the top of the 21 bull, and you'd still be in profit no matter when you started. $100 a week over time, no matter what the price, and now you'd be sat on a lot of sats.
Absolutely, absolutely. So do you still you still buying and trading other cryptos? Then you're still actively okay.
Yeah, personally and for my business.
Okay. And are they the more, do you kind of go still to the top 15, 20, or do you kind of go full degen and get some obscure coin that's, you know,
Do you know what? I do. I'm not gonna lie, I do. I am a degen at heart. That's what drew me to Bitcoin in the first place. And because I remember the 2017 bull when you get $1,000 God candles and it was exciting and it was fun and it kind of lost that for me as crypto in general. Now it's more institutional because it sort of reacts to what Jerome Powell says, and that for me is not the space that I joined and loved straight off. I get why it's happening and I get that we need that as an industry to move forward, and for Bitcoin to do its job it needs the institutional adoption, and it probably needs to act like any other financial instrument. Well, it needs to. It will do. But it's not that the whole fun has been taken out, but I do like to have a little bit of my portfolio as a degen bag. Yeah, I do.
well, I guess it's the adrenaline, right?
It is.
I
It
mean,
is the adrenaline. I mean, it is. It's gambling, isn't it? It's
yeah,
gambling in a way. But if
yeah,
one of your gambles pays off and you can make, you know, a lot of Bitcoin
yeah,
with
yeah,
that with
yeah.
that little bag of say 1% of your portfolio that you would have put in Bitcoin, and if you don't mind losing the fiat value of that, then potentially if you hit a decent asset that's going to go, you know, 200, 300x, then you should whack it straight back into Bitcoin and go, thank you very much, which has only happened twice for me.
Okay,
And I
okay.
wish, it's one of those I wish I'd have put more in, but you can't think that way.
But I guess every for everyone that does amazing, there might be some that
Yeah,
you've
there'd be
you've
10
you've
or 15 that was
rug pulled, or
rugged.
it's
So, do you know what? I've only ever been rugged once. So I did have strict rules. Don't buy launches. Don't buy anything under 100 million market cap and that sort of thing. Yeah.
Do you still play with like meme coins though and things like that from a trading, looking at the patterns of trade,
I
etc.
was during the bear market, yeah. I think you can learn a lot about trading, and the psychology of it if you're deep in the trenches, so to speak, as they say. I think you can learn a lot, and I did learn a lot. In the bear market, I was leverage trading as well, just with a really small bag of USDT, nothing more than 10x leverage, and you know, trades small, right?
Just for the shits and giggles.
Just out of sheer boredom.
Yeah. Is there this might be a bit of a tenuous leap, but obviously as a elite level sportsman, there's a lot of adrenaline that you have and in that career.
Yeah.
Is there any do you think there's any element of this is you trying to replace some of that you had in your career with kind of that bit of excitement, and or is that am I trying to be a
You're trying to be a very,
psychologist that doesn't
yeah,
exist?
you're trying to head shrink me here. But I guess you're right. Yeah, I guess you're right. It is a huge adrenaline buzz when you're playing in front of 90,000 people and you take a wicket. And, there's nothing that can replace that, other than different shots of adrenaline, I guess, which would be one. The sort of jeopardy that you feel when your trade's going down and then uh, that can suddenly spike and you make a load of cash. It does give you that endorphinal hit. So yeah, I guess so.
With Boulder Capital, do you work with an ex sportsman specifically?
We work with anyone. So
Okay.
the high net worth investors or institutional clients, that's the only clients that we are allowed to target anyway with the FCA regulations, which I'll just throw it out there as a joke. Um, Straight off the bat, we are trying to get regulated, which is even more of a joke. And um, it's proven it was a quite a big roadblock, but now we're up and running in the way that we're functioning. We qualify through a third party as regulation, but we want our own, and it's difficult and it's expensive as well. I mean, charging the companies that help you get regulated, charging £700,000 for that privilege, I think is ridiculous. And the FCA sort of members club, in inverted commas, that's up north of 1 million to get in there. So yeah, I mean, if you're a startup like us, asset management firm, sorry, digital asset management firm, you need deep pockets to be able to get into the space really.
Well, it's a bit of a catch-22, isn't it? Because until you've got the clients, you probably haven't got deep enough pockets, but you can't get the clients because you're not regulated, and
Correct.
it's a
Correct.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
so
yeah,
we've found a way through, which a lot of companies like us do, and they use a third party KYC and AML system of onboarding. It's quite rigorous to be fair, but we help our clients through that and get them into the market.
yeah. So, how many of the either current athletes, former sportsmen that you know, do you think there's a higher take up of people investing in Bitcoin, or do you think it's just in line with the average population?
I would say it is probably in line with the average
Okay,
population, yeah. Just off the top of my head, that would probably be a good way to describe it. I reckon it is probably in line with the average population, even though these boys are obviously well paid. Most of them, and I say most of them, are not future orientated. They're in their comfort zone, in their little bubble, especially when it comes to finances. Most of them are just so focused on what they're doing inside of cricket to focus on anything else is quite difficult. And I understand that completely because I've been there and I've been in that situation.
yeah, yeah, and money, the pounds they're earning,
Yeah,
they you need to have a second career as an analyst and an investment strategy, to understand what to do with that to stop
yeah,
it from just being eaten away at. So again,
100%.
it completely makes sense that someone focusing on their professional sports career will just pay someone else to do that for them. But again, we're back to the point where financial advisors can't advise on Bitcoin, and they're not incentivized to, because anything that goes out of their pot into Bitcoin isn't assets under management and they don't earn fees on it. So
Correct.
again, it's that the system isn't set up to really, you know, encourage or help those people to actually discover Bitcoin.
I think that's why the educational side of Bitcoin is so important, especially for guys that have short careers in sport. Um, even if it's just for the hedge against inflation. Like, like it doesn't matter, it kind of doesn't really matter what Bitcoin does price wise. It's the hedge against inflation that's even better than anything. So yeah, I mean,
How do you think that could change though, Tim? What would be the best way of trying to educate young sports professionals coming through their career? Because it feels like it's a bit of a shut door, really.
it does. I think, we're looking to try and do something in that space, especially in the cricket, because um, as an advocate for the PCA, I know a lot of the guys that um, control the education system within the PTA. So we can sort of go in there and say, look, guys, this is what's happening to your money. But this is what uh, a, a traditional IFA would do. Uh, and this is what Bitcoin can do for you. We're trying to get into a space where we can provide an education platform for that. Whether it be a small slot on the pre-season meeting that the PCA have with all of the players. It's around March time, so we missed it this year because we were obviously setting up what we're setting up with Boulder. But do you know what? Not only would it be an education for these guys that are earning good money, but it will be a way to attract clients to our platform as well.
Yeah. And I think someone like you is obviously going to have more opportunity, maybe, and influence with the sort of governing bodies because you're not just some random guy coming in. You know, you've been there,
Yeah,
you've been at the top of the game, and now you're taking a different path. Actually, you've got that credibility in both counts.
100%.
So yeah, well, let's hope over time there's a few more Tim Bresnans coming through
Do you know what?
that discover Bitcoin.
There's a WhatsApp group of Bitcoiners
Okay,
in
what
county
of
cricket.
sports people, Bitcoiners, you
No,
mean, or
specifically county cricket.
really?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah. I
okay,
know a few footballers as well, but mainly I know the guys in county cricket. Yeah, there's a WhatsApp group we speak on. I'd say a couple of daily basis.
yeah, yeah,
So there's
yeah,
always messages flying around. There was certainly messages flying around last night with what Nigel Farage said
yeah,
at the Bitcoin conference. So these guys are massively interested in Bitcoin. But again, it would go along with your just sort of the average of the normal population.
yeah. I think though with Bitcoin, once whoever you are, once you start buying a bit and researching a bit, you tend not to step back from that. It's quite hard to, isn't it?
It's quite
It
hard to.
draws you in. It
It does
draws you
draw you
in.
in, and I guess it's easy to watch some of these videos with some of these influencers and buy other stuff. It's very easy to do that. When someone's predicting on your TikTok video a $10,000 XRP, you're like, get me some of that XRP. That's unbelievable. But me and you, know that's unlikely to happen. But Bitcoin could be the one that goes to $1 million, say.
Yeah, which in traditional finance terms, that's a 10x from where we are now.
Yeah,
That's massive.
yeah,
I
it
guess
is.
the slight unfortunate thing, but again, people have to find their own way. Is if you're watching TikTok videos of the next coin that's going to go 200x in the next month, Bitcoin's just dull as dishwater.
Yeah,
But the
it's
but the reality is that thing is probably isn't going to go up 200x,
correct.
and if you leave it in cash, it's going to go backwards. And if you invest in, like, I don't know, stock, shares, property, at best, you're probably going to get to or close to the level of money printing. So
Yeah.
you might just about stay where you are, but you're not going to get any richer off the back of it.
The way I like to explain it is show me another asset that'll do 28% year on year. Like, no matter what happens, like, no matter how deep the drawdown is or what price you buy, give me an asset that's going to do 28% year on year, averaged over inception. Like, you can't, you can't. And then inflation adjusted, it's just the numbers, like, it's crazy. So.
What do you find are the things that put people off the most? If you start to open up a conversation about Bitcoin, what do people usually get spooked by or just don't believe?
The media,
Okay,
the mainstream media, they've controlled this narrative about it being for drugs and
money
scam,
launderers,
money
yeah,
laundering, and the only reason you buy Bitcoin is if you want to do something illegal, or and the fact that uh, it's difficult to custody. This is the mainstream media talking that it's difficult to custody. If you make a mistake, you could just lose all your Bitcoin. You could get hacked for your Bitcoin if you leave it in a wallet. There's a lot of misconceptions out there, and that's what puts people off. That's the main thing that we're hearing when we talk about it.
do you think that's partly why, unfortunately not in this country, but where in America where they've got the Bitcoin ETFs, they've taken off so well? I think partly institutions, but also I think for people who maybe have heard some of those mainstream media issues, particularly around custody, just see that as a safer way. They'd rather trust BlackRock with their Bitcoin, paper Bitcoin, than they would buy Bitcoin themselves and put it on a hardware wallet.
100%. Because all the hassle is taken out of it for them. Even though, like you said, they're buying paper Bitcoin, they want exposure without the hassle. And, that's what we're doing at Boulder is trying to get people exposure to Bitcoin, uh, but in a safe environment with, safe custody, safe transactions without the hassle, but then they've got the Bitcoin.
Yeah, or they're getting the returns in fiat that they would have been getting had they bought the Bitcoin themselves. I guess
Correct.
that's
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
correct.
Which is a journey, isn't it? Again, Bitcoin maxis would be vomiting in a sink right now hearing that last 30 seconds. But the reality is it's still benefiting the Bitcoin network
Yes, it
because
is.
it's
Because more
people,
people in the space,
yeah. And so even someone who's putting in 5% of their net worth into a Bitcoin ETF, there's an increased chance that they'll learn more about it and find out that actually self custody isn't that scary thing that the mainstream media say it is, and
correct.
a good proportion of those will start to just find out more about it rather than just number go up.
100%. 100%. That's people are a lot smarter than, we give them credit for. So if you buy a speculative asset, well, we know it's not speculative, but for the, people outside of our circle, Bitcoin is a very small circle of people, especially in the UK. People who buy Bitcoin, it's a speculative asset, and they do need the education. But I think if they do buy a speculative asset, then they will go on the research and they will go down the rabbit hole, so to speak. And then once they've done that, it's there's they are in the circle
Yeah,
of trust, let's call it.
yeah. But I think it also takes a level of curiosity. You've got to be a slight maverick, be slightly suspicious of the systems that we're working in to even consider looking into it, really. So I think the people that do start looking at Bitcoin and buying some, I think they've already, at the moment, this will change over time for sure. But certainly if you go back 5, 10 years, it was probably even more extreme. But I think you had to have that level of questioning and distrust and curiosity to even consider looking at it.
I mean, it's all part of the adoption curve. It's exactly what it is, and that's where we are now. I'm not sure how far up the adoption curve, but it is approaching exponential, in my opinion.
Yeah, yeah. So what about with your friends and family? How do you approach it with them?
I guess I've got the same story as everyone else. Like you mention it, and you have a couple of nights out where you bore people to tears, and you're like, "No, I'm telling you, mate. Like this is exactly what's going to happen." And then, yeah, of course, this is 4 or 5 years ago, and then you look to now, and then you get the people going, "Oh, I wish I'd have listened to you." And it's difficult to then say, "I told you so," but you
Depending on the
kind of just
person, sometimes it's quite nice saying that, isn't it?
it is, but I do refrain from doing that, or I try to. I spin it the other way. I say, look, if you got in now, you're still early.
A person you spoke to 5 years ago, who you see now, and they say, "Oh, I wish I'd listened to you 5 years ago, Tim." You're like, "Well, listen to me now. I'll tell you the same thing,
Yeah,
which is buy it and hold it, and in 5 years' time, you'll thank me that you did. You're not too late. It's just And the thing that sort of dawned on me 6 months ago in that too late conversation, you could look at any asset class at all that's gone up in value over the year. Property, someone who's buying a house today is buying it close to or at its all-time high.
Yeah,
Someone who's putting money in a pension and buying Apple shares, they're buying it at or close to an all-time high.
yeah,
But for some reason, people seem to think, well, Bitcoin is, to use the word you just used, speculative,
yeah,
and it might crash to zero. So
yeah.
it's really risky if I buy it now because it's close to its all-time high. But
I saw a tweet the other day that compared buying Bitcoin now with like buying New York City real estate in the 1920s.
yeah, yeah,
Very good analogy and pretty accurate, in my opinion, to where we're going.
there are some things that are scarce, like you might say waterfront property space, etc., because there's only so much waterfront. But Bitcoin is the only large-scale asset that is truly scarce. But again, scarcity is something that people can't. It's quite difficult for people to get their head around, I think, to realize that the pounds that they've got in their bank just can get taken away or printed at the click of a finger.
Correct. 100%. Or
Yeah,
they could just get debanked,
yeah,
which is
yeah.
my biggest worry, to be honest.
What, personally or just generally?
Yeah, I think personally, I know a lot of people that are, you know, obviously in the crypto space that have been either debanked or had their accounts frozen. My bank that I was with for 15 years turned around to me and said, "We can't let you put any more money into cryptocurrency." I was like, "Do what I want with my money." They were like, "Well, actually, no, you can't." So I'm like, "Right, okay. See you later." Like, I'm moving my money somewhere else that'll let me do what I want with my own money. I think we've all had that conversation with our bank. Every single Bitcoiner has had that conversation with this bank, which is a shame. But adoption is again exponential. It's just around the corner. So, and there's more banks jumping on board to be able to transact, buy, custody, and if the banks aren't going to move with the times, then they're going to get left behind.
How quickly do you think those things will change, maybe in the likes of USA versus in the UK?
I think the USA are 5 years in front of us, at least, probably even seven,
Yeah,
7 to 10.
and moving at 10 times the pace as well.
Yeah,
So they're
100%.
they're
Yeah,
ahead of us and moving away from us, I think. Yeah.
yeah, we are getting left behind. Like I don't want to get into politics or anything like that more than we already have done. But yeah, we're miles behind and getting left further behind with regulation, with legislation, with everything. It was only a couple of weeks ago that the government came out and said we will not be looking into a Bitcoin strategic reserve. And I was like, that is just the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Every other country is stacking BTC. Every other, the royal states and from Azerbaijan to Bhutan are stacking BTC, and you know, as a nation, we're just getting left behind. Just
Although
short-sighted,
we are lucky that we've got some through seized assets, but
confiscated. Yeah,
yeah, but you kind of, there's one part of me that thinks it's probably a good thing that they're clueless and hopefully just sit on it, because if they really thought about it and said, well, we could sell what we've got to fund, I don't know, a few more hospitals or give the elderly some money towards their energy bills this winter,
yeah,
then it's all gone.
yeah.
So at least while we're doing nothing, that's probably better than doing something bad.
As soon as they discover that they've got all that money there, they're gonna sell it. You know it.
Do you
Germany
think?
did the same thing in March, I think, or was it end of February?
It was, I think it was about $50,000 a coin, wasn't it, when they sold all theirs? So
Yeah, they
they've
sold
missed
it at
out on
50K.
billions.
Yeah,
Yeah, but again, they've missed out on billions of money that they can just print anyway. So it kind of, I know
yeah,
it's
yeah,
not
yeah.
good for the Germans, and the
No,
same will be true for us, because ultimately, if the UK keeps hold of the Bitcoin we've got,
yeah,
it will, over time, make our national debt not as bad as it would have been if we
yeah,
sell it. But
yeah.
it's still, in the grand scheme of things, it's not a
I mean,
massive
you
number.
make a good point there. I mean, Germany could just print a load of money and buy Bitcoin with it, like even now, and still not be in that worse estate. They've missed out on, like you said, billions, but they could just print a couple of bill and be absolutely square from where they were, and the taxpayers would just pick up the tab.
Yeah. Well, and that's where the game theory might start playing out as soon as and I think Saifedean Ammous has said this, amongst others. Once the nation state realizes we can print this stuff on one hand and buy the hardest money the world has ever seen on the other. As soon as someone starts doing that, and maybe America will be the catalyst for that, or they'll revalue their gold or sell some gold and use that money to buy Bitcoin. Who knows? But that
I
could be
think
a
that would be the catalyst for the next leg up if they sold their gold and bought Bitcoin. I think all the legislation and all the chat and all the SBR and all that sort of stuff, it's just noise for now. But if they made that switch, that would be groundbreaking.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Tim. Well, I want to be respectful of your time. The last question I ask of all my guests is, what's one belief you held before Bitcoin that you've completely changed your mind about?
Since I started educating myself on how money actually works, there's hundreds. I wasn't even that clued up on what inflation was, I think. So that would be the biggest one. Um, the devaluation of currency and your spending power against um, the fact the more they print of the dirty fiat, as we like to call it, the more your spending power is reduced. I guess that was my mind blowing. Yeah, that's why we're all getting poorer.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Because before that, we're all led to believe that inflation is healthy. We have a target of 2% for some reason.
correct.
But yeah, like if you read Jeff Booth's book, we live in a deflationary, technology is deflationary.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, when you print money, it goes the other way.
I've read quite a decent few books actually in the last couple of months. Who's the guy? He tweeted me back actually. He's the one on Lawrence Lippard.
Oh yeah, okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
I read that one on holiday.
Oh yeah, I saw you. I saw your sunshine post.
Yeah, I got this one to go at.
Oh yeah, that's a great book, but it's quite a deep tome, isn't it?
Yeah, so I'm not sure that's holiday specific. I think I need a bit
For the benefit
more
of
of a
the people
lighter one.
listening, it's Broken Money by Lynn Alden.
Yeah, sorry. I
Yeah,
didn't
that's
realize
all right.
this wasn't any. Yeah, so Lynn Alden, Broken Money is the one that
Yeah,
I'm going to tackle next.
yeah, yeah. No, that's great. That's a great book. And I saw her at the Bitcoin conference
Yeah.
presenting last night, and it was fantastic again.
I need to catch up on all that stuff that's happened in the last 2 days. I've been so busy, to be honest.
Well, I appreciate you finding some time to speak to little old me,
No
Tim,
problem.
and you're kind enough. You're going to come to Bury St Edmunds in September and be part of our Bitcoin conference, which is
That's right,
fantastic.
yeah. I'm looking forward to meeting everyone, to be honest. I'm not looking
Yeah,
forward
no,
to
it'd be
being up
great.
on stage, but because it's slightly different. I did the Bradford Football Club, Bradford City Football Club business lunch, where they have a special get on and stuff, and it was basically to talk about Boulder, and I was like, gosh, I'm not sure I am eloquent enough to get the right sort of message across, but I guess once you relax into it and just start talking, it's just a conversation, right?
Absolutely, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And you know what?
As
I'll
long as you
say
don't
things
mention
that
XRP, we'll be fine.
I'll say things that are probably incorrect, and I'll say things that, the way I understand things aren't quite as well as what other people in the room might understand them. But
Yeah.
end of the day, I'm a cricketer. I'm not an economist.
No, no, absolutely. And
I just find
we've
it
all got
interesting.
different. We all have different walks of life and different paths that we've walked and different experiences. And I think it's really great that they all come together. And if you look at the list of speakers, there's a whole varied
Yeah,
people with
exactly.
all sorts of different experiences. I mean, Claire Chisholm, who's the principal of the Lomond School in Scotland. I mean, she only discovered Bitcoin a few months ago, but like she's so passionate, and when she talks about it and the impact it will have on education and all of those things, it's great. I think it's hopefully it'll be a great day. It's not got to just be a Bitcoin maxi flag waving session, but yeah, it'll be great.
Yeah, I look forward
Well, I
to
look
it.
forward to meeting you in the flesh, and I might have to brush up on my cricket before then, just so that I can be a bit more credible.
I'm not there to talk about cricket, mate.
No, that's good. That's good. I'm sure there'll be lots of adoring cricket fans that can't wait to shake your hand.
Yeah, hopefully.
Great.
Hopefully.
Okay.
All
Well,
right.
thanks again, Tim.
No
It's great to
worries.
meet you, and I look forward to seeing you in September.
Thanks, Gary. Cheers. Thanks for having me on.